I still remember the day my life changed forever, the day I hit rock bottom. I was 25 years old, living in my hometown, surrounded by the familiar streets and faces I had grown up with. But despite the comfort and security of being in a place I knew so well, I couldn't shake off the feeling of being lost and alone. My weight had always been a struggle for me, and over the years, it had become a constant source of frustration and disappointment. I had tried every diet, every exercise routine, every quick fix, but nothing seemed to work for long. I would lose a few pounds only to gain them back, and then some. As I walked into the doctor's office that day, I knew something was off. The nurse had called me earlier, asking me to come in for some test results, and I could sense the gravity in her voice. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was just my imagination, but deep down I knew. I knew that something was wrong. The doctor's face was somber as he greeted me, and I could see the concern etched on his features. He led me to a small examination room, and we sat down, the only sound the soft rustling of papers on his desk. "The test results are in," he began, his voice measured and calm. "And I'm afraid the news isn't good." He paused, collecting his thoughts before continuing. "You have a condition that, if left untreated, could lead to serious health complications. Your weight is not just a matter of aesthetics. It's a ticking time bomb, waiting to unleash a host of problems that could affect your quality of life, even your longevity." I felt like I had been punched in the gut, the wind knocked out of me. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The words swirled around me, a jumbled mess of fear and anxiety. The doctor's words were like a death sentence, a devastating diagnosis that left me reeling. I felt hopeless, like I was staring into the abyss with no safety net to catch me if I fell. The medical prognosis was grim, and I couldn't help but wonder if I would ever be able to escape the prison of my own body. I left the doctor's office that day feeling like I was walking through a nightmare, the darkness closing in around me like a shroud. I didn't know how I would respond to this dire diagnosis, but I knew I had to do something. The question was, what? I still remember the day I hit rock bottom, sitting in my dark apartment, surrounded by empty pizza boxes and soda cans. The words of the doctor echoed in my mind, "You'll never lose weight again." It felt like a prison sentence, a life trapped in a body I no longer recognized. But as I sat there, feeling hopeless, something inside me sparked. Maybe it was the anger, the frustration, or the desperation, but I knew I had to do something. That's when I stumbled upon a support group at my local gym. I had driven by that gym countless times, watching people jog and lift weights, feeling like an outsider looking in. But something about that day was different. I decided to take a chance and walk in. The meeting room was filled with people from all walks of life, each with their own story of struggle and perseverance. And then I saw her, a woman with a warm smile and an infectious energy. She introduced herself as Sarah, a marathon runner who had lost over 100 pounds. I was skeptical at first, but as she shared her story, I felt a glimmer of hope. Sarah talked about the importance of community and mentorship in weight loss. She explained how having a support system and a clear goal could make all the difference. And then she dropped a bombshell. She was training for a marathon. I laughed, thinking it was impossible, but she just smiled and said, "Why not?" For the first time in my life, I felt like I was part of something bigger than myself. The concept of marathon running seemed like a distant dream, but Sarah made it sound achievable. Over the next few weeks, I started attending the support group meetings regularly. Sarah took me under her wing, introducing me to the world of running and healthy eating. We started with small steps, short walks around the block, gradually increasing the distance and intensity. It was tough, but with Sarah by my side, I felt like I could conquer anything. The local gym became my sanctuary, a place where I could escape the chaos of my life and focus on my goal. As I looked around the gym, I saw people from all shapes and sizes, each with their own story of struggle and triumph. There was John, a former smoker who had just completed his first 5,000. Emily, a young mom who had lost 50 pounds and was training for a triathlon. And Mark, a retired teacher who had just finished his first marathon. They all had one thing in common, a spark of determination and a willingness to take that first step. I realized that I wasn't alone in this journey. I had Sarah, the support group, and the entire gym community cheering me on. The question was, would I find the courage to start my weight loss journey? Would I be able to silence the voice of doubt and take that first step towards a healthier lifestyle? Only time would tell, but for the first time in my life, I felt like I had a chance. I still remember the day I decided to take the first steps towards a healthier lifestyle like it was yesterday. The sun was shining bright, casting a warm glow over the local park where I had decided to start my journey. The air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers and the sound of birds chirping, creating a sense of peace and tranquility that I hadn't experienced in a long time. As I walked through the park, I felt a mix of emotions, excitement, nervousness, and a hint of doubt. I had never been much of a fitness enthusiast, but something about the idea of running resonated with me. Maybe it was the thought of being able to clear my mind, or maybe it was the desire to prove to myself that I could do something I never thought I could. Whatever the reason, I was determined to give it a shot. I started with small, achievable goals, short walks around the block, gradually increasing in distance and duration. It wasn't easy, and there were times when I felt like giving up. My legs would ache, my breath would get shorter, and I'd feel like I was going to collapse. But I didn't. I pushed through, reminding myself that every step I took was a step closer to my goal. And then, one day, I decided to try running. I mean really running, not just jogging or walking fast, but actual running. I picked a trail in the park, one that was relatively flat and easy to navigate, and I set off. The first few minutes were exhilarating, the wind in my hair, the sun on my face, and the feeling of my feet pounding the ground. But as the minutes ticked by, reality started to set in. My lungs were burning, my legs were screaming, and I felt like I was going to die. I slowed down to a walk, gasping for air and wondering what on earth I had got myself into. But I didn't give up. I kept at it day after day, gradually increasing my running distance and duration. And with each passing day, I started to notice changes in my body. I was getting stronger, faster, and more confident. I was learning to overcome setbacks, to push through the pain and the doubt, and to trust in my own abilities. It wasn't easy, and there were still times when I felt like quitting. But I knew that I couldn't give up, not now, not when I had come so far. And so I kept going, one step at a time, one run at a time, until I reached a point where I could run for miles without stopping. It was an incredible feeling, one that I'll never forget. And it was just the beginning of my journey, a journey that would take me to places I never thought I'd go, and teach me lessons I never thought I'd learn. But for now, I was just taking it one step at a time, enjoying the journey and seeing where it would take me. I still remember the day I stepped on the scale and saw a number that I hadn't seen in years. The weight was finally coming off, and I could feel the difference in my body. My energy levels were higher, my joints didn't ache as much, and I could run for longer periods without feeling drained. It was an incredible feeling, knowing that all my hard work was paying off. As I continued on my fitness journey, I realized that I needed to take my training to the next level. I started working with a coach who helped me create a structured training plan tailored to my goals and needs. It was amazing to see how much of a difference it made, having a plan in place and knowing exactly what I needed to do each day. I was no longer just running for the sake of running. I was training with a purpose. One of the most significant changes I made was introducing variety into my training. I stopped doing the same old routes and started exploring new ones. I joined a local running club and met other runners who shared my passion. We would meet up on weekends and run together, exploring new trails and pushing each other to be our best. It was incredible to have that social support, to have people who understood what I was going through and could offer advice and encouragement. But, as with anything in life, progress is never linear. I hit plateaus where it felt like no matter how hard I trained, I wasn't getting any faster or stronger. There were days when I felt like giving up, when the motivation just wasn't there. I would look at myself in the mirror and think, what's the point of all this? I'm never going to be good enough. But then I would remind myself of how far I had come, of all the progress I had made. I would think about the people who believed in me, my coach, my running buddies, and my family. And I would find the strength to keep going. I learned that it's okay to have off days, to have days when you just don't feel like running. But it's what you do on those days that matters. Do you let the motivation slip away, or do you find a way to push through? For me, it was about finding new ways to stay motivated. I would set small goals for myself, like running a certain distance or completing a tough workout. And when I achieved those goals, I would reward myself with something nice, like a new pair of running shoes or a massage. As I look back on that period of my life, I realized that it was the small victories that kept me going. It was the sense of community and belonging that I found with my fellow runners. And it was the knowledge that I was capable of so much more than I ever thought possible. I was no longer just a person trying to lose weight. I was a runner, an athlete, a champion. And that feeling, that sense of pride and accomplishment, is what drove me to keep pushing forward to see where this journey would take me. I still remember the day I decided to take my running to the next level, to train for a marathon. It was a daunting task, one that seemed almost impossible given where I had started, but something about the challenge resonated deeply with me. I knew it wouldn't be easy. In fact, it would be the hardest thing I'd ever undertaken. But I was determined. With each step, each decision, I was setting the bar high, not just for my body, but for my mind as well. My first step was to find a coach, someone who could guide me through the rigorous process of marathon training. That's when I met Sarah, an experienced marathon runner with a no-nonsense attitude and a wealth of knowledge. She had run numerous marathons, completing them with times that I could only dream of achieving at that point. Yet despite her impressive background, she was kind, patient, and willing to take on a novice like me. Sarah introduced me to a specific training regimen, one that was both detailed and demanding. It involved a combination of running, strength training, and rest days. The running wasn't just about hitting the pavement and logging miles. It was about doing intervals, hill sprints, and long, slow-distance runs. Each type of run had its place in my training, designed to improve my endurance, speed, and mental toughness. Strength training was also crucial, focusing on exercises that would improve my running posture, reduce my risk of injury, and enhance my overall performance. And then there were the rest days, which were just as important as the training days, giving my body the time it needed to recover and adapt to the increasing demands I was placing on it. As I delved deeper into my training, I encountered my first major hurdle, the mental and physical challenges that came with increased training. There were days when my body felt like it was on fire, when every step felt like a struggle, and when the mere thought of running another mile seemed insurmountable. The doubts crept in, whispering that I wasn't good enough, that I'd never make it to the finish line. But Sarah was always there, offering words of encouragement, reminding me of my progress and pushing me to believe in myself. The training camps we attended were incredible experiences. They were held in locations that were specifically chosen for their challenging terrains, mimicking the conditions of various marathons around the world. Being surrounded by other runners, all striving for the same goal, created a sense of camaraderie and competition that spurred me forward. We shared stories of our struggles and our triumphs, and in doing so, we found strength in each other's company. The detailed planning and dedication required for marathon training were eye-opening. Every aspect of my life had to be tuned to support my training, my diet, my sleep schedule, even my social life. It wasn't easy, and there were times when I felt like I was sacrificing too much. But with each passing day, I could feel myself getting stronger, not just physically, but mentally as well. The early morning runs, the late evening strength sessions, they all contributed to a sense of discipline and resilience that I had never known I possessed. Now, as I stand here on the threshold of this new chapter in my journey, I am faced with my next challenge, adapting to the intense demands of marathon training. It's a path fraught with uncertainty, filled with days that will push me to my limits, both physically and mentally. But I am ready. I have come too far to turn back now. The question is, how will I adapt? Will I find a way to overcome the obstacles that lie ahead, or will they prove too great for me to overcome? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain. I am ready to face whatever comes next, head-on. I was sitting on my couch, staring blankly at the wall as I nursed my injured leg. The pain was throbbing, a constant reminder of the setback I had just experienced. Just a few days ago, I was on top of the world, my marathon training going smoothly, and my confidence soaring. But now, everything seemed to be falling apart. As I sat there feeling hopeless and defeated, the negative self-talk started to creep in. "You're not good enough," it whispered. "You'll never be able to run a marathon." I tried to push the thoughts away, but they lingered, echoing in my mind like a broken record. I felt like I was losing myself, like I was drowning in a sea of self-doubt. I knew I needed to get out of my head, to find a way to silence the negative voices and regain my confidence. So I did the only thing I could think of. I reached out to my loved ones. My family and friends had always been supportive, and I knew they would be there for me now. I called my mom, and she answered on the first ring. "Hey, sweetie, what's wrong?" she asked, sensing the desperation in my voice. I broke down, telling her everything, the injury, the self-doubt, the fear that I wouldn't be able to achieve my goal. She listened, offering words of comfort and encouragement. "You're strong, you can do this," she said. "You just need to take it one step at a time, focus on your recovery, and trust the process." Her words were like a balm to my soul, soothing my fears and calming my doubts. But but I knew I needed more than just my family's support. I needed to surround myself with people who understood what I was going through, people who could offer guidance and advice. So I reached out to the running community, joining a local running group and attending meetings with other runners who were going through similar struggles. It was there that I met Sarah, a seasoned marathon runner who had overcome her own share of setbacks and injuries. She shared her story with me, telling me about the times she had felt like giving up, but had persevered and come out stronger on the other side. Her words were inspiring, and I found myself feeling a spark of hope that I hadn't felt in weeks. As I sat at home, recovering and reflecting on my journey, I realized that the psychological aspects of endurance training were just as important as the physical. It wasn't just about putting in the miles and doing the workouts. It was about mental toughness, about being able to overcome obstacles and stay focused on my goal. I thought about all the times I had pushed through tough workouts, all the early morning runs and long weekends spent training. I thought about the sacrifices I had made, the times I had put my training ahead of social events and nights out with friends. And I realized that it was all worth it, that every struggle and setback was an opportunity to learn and grow. As I looked around my living room, I felt a sense of comfort and peace wash over me. This was my sanctuary, my safe space where I could retreat from the world and focus on my recovery. I knew that I still had a long way to go, that the road to recovery would be tough and uncertain. But I also knew that I wasn't alone, that I had the support of my loved ones and the running community to carry me through. And so, I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of determination and purpose that I hadn't felt in weeks. I knew that I would rebound from this setback, that I would stay focused on my goal and push through the doubt and fear. I would rise above it, using it as fuel to drive me forward. The question was, could I stay on track, or would the doubts and fears creep back in, threatening to derail my dreams once again? I'll never forget the feeling of excitement and nervousness as I entered the final countdown to the New York City Marathon. With doubts overcome, I had finally made it to the last stages of my training, and I could feel the weight of all my hard work bearing down on me. The next few days were crucial. It was time to taper, to rest and allow my body to recover from the intense months of training I had put in. As I reduced my mileage and focused on active recovery, I couldn't help but think about the upcoming race. I would lie in bed at night, visualizing myself crossing the finish line, the roar of the crowd, the feeling of pride and accomplishment. I would see myself running strong, my feet pounding the pavement in perfect rhythm, my breathing steady and controlled. I would imagine the smell of the city, the sound of the crowds cheering, and the feeling of the cool autumn air on my face. But visualization was just one part of my mental preparation. I also worked on calming my nerves, on focusing on the present moment, and letting go of any doubts or fears that still lingered. I reminded myself of all that I had achieved, of the early morning runs, the long Sundays, the endless miles of training. I knew that I was ready, that I had done everything I could to prepare for this moment. As the days ticked down, I began to make my final preparations. I packed my bags, laid out my gear, and double-checked the weather forecast for New York City. I was ready for anything rain, shine, heat, or cold. I was ready to give it my all, to leave everything on the course. And then, it was time to travel to New York City, to the venue of the marathon. As I arrived in the city, I could feel the energy building. There were runners everywhere, all of us united in our quest for glory, for personal bests, for the thrill of competition. I felt a sense of camaraderie with my fellow participants, a sense of shared purpose and determination. As I made my way to the expo to pick up my bib and race packet, I couldn't help but feel a sense of awe at the sheer scale of the event. There were thousands of runners, all of us gathered in one place, all of us ready to take on the challenge of a lifetime. I felt proud to be a part of it, proud to be a marathon runner, proud to be me. And now, as I stand at the threshold of this momentous occasion, I am filled with a sense of anticipation and wonder. What will be the outcome of all my hard work and dedication? Will I cross the finish line with a personal best, or will I struggle to make it to the end? Only time will tell, but one thing is for sure: I am ready, I am strong, and I am determined to give it my all. As I stood at the starting line of the New York City Marathon, I couldn't help but think about the journey that had brought me here. The early morning wake-up calls, the endless miles of training, the sacrifices I had made to pursue my dream. It all seemed worth it now, as I gazed out at the sea of determined faces around me. The day of the New York City Marathon had finally arrived, and I was ready. As the gun went off, I felt a rush of adrenaline coursing through my veins. The crowds cheered, the music pumped, and we were off. The first few miles flew by in a blur, my feet pounding the pavement in a steady rhythm. I had done this before, but never on this scale. The sheer magnitude of the event was exhilarating, and I reveled in the electric atmosphere. But as the miles ticked by, the reality of the challenge began to sink in. My legs started to ache, my lungs burned, and the wall of exhaustion loomed ahead. I had hit the infamous wall that every marathon runner dreads. My mind began to wander, doubts crept in, and I wondered if I had bitten off more than I could chew. The doubts whispered in my ear, "You're not good enough, you're not strong enough, you'll never make it." Yet I drew on every last ounce of determination I possessed. I remembered the countless hours of training, the sweat, the tears, and the sacrifices. I thought of all the people who had supported me along the way, who had believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And I thought of the finish line, beckoning me like a siren's call. With newfound resolve, I pushed through the pain, digging deep to find the strength I needed to keep going. The crowds grew thicker, the noise grew louder, and I fed off the energy of the spectators. I began to focus on the finish line, visualizing myself crossing it, feeling the sense of pride and accomplishment that would come with it. As I turned the corner onto Central Park South, the finish line came into view. The noise was deafening, a cacophony of cheers and chants that lifted me up and carried me forward. I summoned every last bit of energy, pumping my arms and legs in a frantic bid to reach the line. And then, in an instant, I was crossing it. The feeling was indescribable, a rush of emotions that left me breathless and elated. I had done it. I had run the New York City Marathon, and I had emerged victorious. The sense of pride and accomplishment washed over me, and I felt like I was walking on air. As I looked around at the sea of faces, all of whom were beaming with pride and exhaustion, I knew that I was not alone. We had all been on this journey together, and we had all emerged transformed. In that moment, I realized that the true victory was not just crossing the finish line, but the transformation I had undergone. I had faced my fears, pushed my limits, and discovered a strength within myself that I never knew I possessed. The marathon had been a journey of self-discovery, a testament to the human spirit's capacity to persevere and overcome. And as I stood there, basking in the glow of triumph, I knew that I would carry this sense of pride and accomplishment with me for the rest of my life.